Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. We have an amazing topic for you, and that is how to master the perfect pull request. My name is Aralee McSweeney, and I'll be your moderator and sort of a panelist today, sharing the perspective and the experiences of an engineering manager. Let's get started with our panelists. So I'm going to turn it over to Rin and Hila to introduce themselves. And can you also tell us what is your PR superpower?
Hi, everyone. I'm Rin Daniels. I'm the tech lead of the cloud platform team at Mapbox, and my PR superpower is opening what looks like a really small, simple PR that somehow snowballs into an enormous yak shave that has us rethinking all of our engineering principles. So, nice skill to have sometimes when things are too quiet.
Cool.
Amazing. Hila?
Hi everyone, I'm Hila Fish, currently a solutions architect, but my previous roles were system admin / system engineer, revolving to a DevOps engineer. So I opened a lot of pull requests back in the day. And my superpower is spotting typos. So basically an E instead of an A, or if it's a dot instead of a comma, stuff like that. So I just see it instantly.
Amazing. So a little more about me. I'm a results-driven engineering leader with over a decade of experience leading high-performing engineering teams. So definitely improving pull requests and other team functions is something that I get very excited about. So my PR superpower would be focused on creating a high-functioning, high cohesion environment where team members can really do their best with a focus on continuous improvement. It's about getting a bit better each and every day. So a little bit about the flow of our panel today. Pull requests have the power to impact your team's productivity, code quality, culture, and of course, your project outcomes. But they're also one of the most fraught and time-consuming parts of the software development process. Cutting corners during code reviews and, whether it's skipping tests or neglecting documentation or even rushing through feedback can really compound technical debt, bypass critical learning opportunities, and sometimes you end up pushing an error to production. So in the 45 minutes or so that we have today, we're going to really dig in and cover what we think a great PR is. We're going to cover some of our personal experiences, where we grew, what habits we had to unlearn. And we'll also wrap things up, ensuring that all of you can take away one key thing to start improving the PR culture for your team as early as tomorrow. So I'm really excited. Why don't we get started? What is the life cycle of a PR and how do you create great PRs? Hila, let's start with you.
So most of my PRs were in the realms of infrastructure as code, so Terraform code, for example, Chef, etc. Some of my PRs were pure programming languages, but mostly it was Terraform stuff. So for me, it's starting with the task itself, understanding the task, understanding that the code that I write actually addresses the use case and not anything more, anything less. Once everything is settled, then I will write the code, test it, which is, I think, the most important part, to make sure that it is doing exactly what I want it to do, and that it is written in a very precise and clear way for human beings, because for those of you who are using Terraform, it's very easy to go into the rabbit hole and write a lot of functions that nobody will get it. So don't go there and just write human code that people and human can easily understand. So basically, write the code, make sure it works, and then once I know that the infrastructure was tested, I checked it, Terraform plan apply, and everything looks good in dev, of course, not production. Then I will open the PR, and then in the PR description, I will write exactly, I will put the link to the a Jira ticket that has description, okay, not just a header and that's it. A good Jira ticket with a description of why do we need this task. Then I will put in the description how did I test this PR, basically in which environment, if we have several dev environments, and how did I test it, like step by step, because I want to make sure that the person that reviews it checks what I checked and say, okay, this is a good check, or would say maybe, no, wait, there is another environment or another way or a edge case that you need to check, so please check it out before I approve this PR. So that's why I explain it. And then once the PR is open, then I ask for a review from people that I know that know Terraform enough for me to get like good feedback from them. Because if they don't, and this is one thing that I can say, if someone asks for me to review a PR in language that I don't know, I'm not gonna touch it because I'm not gonna sign off on something that I can't really say if it's good or not. So it goes both way. Terraform, I know of the people in my team or other teams that know Terraform well, so I will ask them specifically and add them as the reviewers and say, hey, you have everything, you have the Jira ticket, you have the context, you have how I tested out, please review the PR. And then I wait for the comments and see how it goes.
That's great. So it sounds like you do a lot of work up front to make sure that you're delivering a high quality PR. Rin, I'm curious about your process.
Very similar. I think there's a lot of really great stuff that you just said. I think the context is really important. The context of why are we making these changes? I think getting people to agree on, what changes need to be made and kind of the rough sense of how at the beginning can speed up the overall life cycle of a PR a lot, because I kind of like performance reviews. Nothing in code reviews should be a big surprise. I think everyone should kind of be on the same page about what is the problem that we're solving and how are we going to solve it, so that you don't start reviewing code and be like, actually, there's some big assumptions that were made here that don't actually line up with reality. Now we need to go back to the drawing board. If you're going to make those kind of discoveries, you want to get that happening earlier, ideally before you've written all the code. And then I think the other thing that I would add is kind of the automation of how you want to do things. So any, CI, if there's, particular tags that need to be present for automation, like automated GitHub actions to do, builds or deploys or anything like that, use a PR template that prompts people to do things like explain what's happening, put the link to the tests, the link to the Jira ticket, that sort of thing, so that you aren't relying on people remembering to do that. Anything that you can do to help kind of smooth over the process to make it easy for people to do things the right way.
Absolutely. Definitely agree with you on standardizing and try to drive consistency. I think that definitely contributes to a high quality PR culture. I guess where I would like to hear from both of you is on time management. So we identify reviewers, but a lot of things can happen, right? Team members can be on PTO, or maybe it's even unclear who needs to review a particular section of it. How do we what's your perspective on time management and how to best handle a PR, getting a PR reviewed in a timely manner?
You want to take it, Bryn?
Sure. I think it's really important to agree on what your standards are as a team, because different teams are going to have different expectations. I've worked on teams where the expectation was like, everyone is kind of looking at getting their GitHub notifications live. So when you get a PR, you're supposed to be on it like within a few minutes. I've worked on teams where as long as it was within the week, it just kind of depends on what your team's velocity and preferences are. I like to set aside time in the morning every day to kind of go through my GitHub notifications and start my day by kind of reviewing the PRs that have come in, which helps my brain warm up in the mornings while the coffee is flowing. And before I start writing code myself, this works pretty well in, time zone distributed teams where, I'm in Finland myself. I've got team members in North America. What they wrote while I was sleeping, I can now review while they're asleep, which can, you get some nice cross time zone synergies that way. But yeah, setting the standards on the team for how you do that, I think can help make sure that everyone is aligned on terms of expectations. So you don't have people, sitting there twiddling their thumbs when somebody isn't going to get to it for, a day or two.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I can add that, first of all, I am mindful of other people's time, so I wouldn't open a PR and say, hey, it needs to go in 5 minutes, so please approve, unless it's a very, like a fix for production, then it is what it is. But if it's a regular work day, then I will open the PR and in a timely manner where I will give them enough time to review, and I will tell them when I open the PR, I will say, if it's not, because there are automations where you get the PR on the channel, but if not, then, or maybe if there is so, I will add in the thread, please, people always report and comment in threads. Don't open a new comment, just something, side note. I love threads. So I will write in the thread, this deadline is in a week or 2 weeks, so you have time, whatever. So I will be mindful of that. And in terms of time management in general, I just yesterday did a mini course about it because it was interesting for me. So cluster tasks together that needs the same type of energy slash investment from your end. So if you have let's say a big team and there are several pull requests, just cluster it in the time of the day that makes sense to you. If you are more focused on the morning, noon, whatever, and then just do everything at the same time. And then if it doesn't, like if someone opened the PR afterwards, it will wait for the next day because we assume that it can wait unless, there are exceptions. But these are like my 2 cents about that.
Absolutely. And as an engineering manager, I think one of the key things that come to mind for me is seeing feedback coming in from different engineers with different expertise levels, for example. And so I want to dig into that a little bit. And I also invite, if you're an engineer, EM, a senior engineer, and you're watching this, if you have questions based on anything the panelists have said already, please feel free to submit them to the Q&A. We might be able to integrate some of them into our discussion today. But coming back to the engineering manager perspective, as well as a culture that we'd like to set around PRs, how do you feel feedback should differ, right? If you're a more junior engineer reviewing something a more senior engineer wrote and vice versa, there are dynamics there. And how can more junior engineers not feel intimidated sometimes by comments and reviews from more senior engineers? Anyone can jump in.
Yeah. I would say that it all starts with culture because if let's say a junior opens a PR, the person that reviews it needs to know, okay, they are a junior, so I should expect a certain level or certain extent of the knowledge they have, and then I will provide the comments properly, So that's from that end. Other end, a senior can open a PR and a junior can comment on it because the syllabus of whatever they are learning in the university evolves all the time, and who knows, there's a new algorithm. Or I'm not a software developer. Maybe I'm full of I don't know, but maybe there's something new that they learned that the seniors didn't learn, and they can teach them something new. Everyone and every time, regardless of how many years of experience you have in the industry, you can learn something new every day from anyone. So that's about that in general, about not being intimidated. So the people that reviews the PR needs to know, dude or gal or whatever, they are a junior. Please construct the comments in a constructive way, in a way that makes sense, that they can ingest it and they will say, good, I learned, and not be angry or I don't know why people will do it, but yeah. And that way it will be just a teaching moment, and that's it, because this is what the PR is for. We are both, and all the reviewers basically are there for one single purpose, which is to make sure the code is in a high quality to not have issues in production, but also as a teaching moment for whoever opened the PR to say, hey, this is an opportunity for you to learn something new. So
Yeah, I think there's a lot of responsibility that falls on senior engineers to lead by example and to create a really constructive culture. Like if you're a senior and you are reviewing a junior's PR, you know, don't be mindful of your tone. I think it's easy for questions like, why did you do it this way, to come across as accusatory rather than curious, especially if, it's a fully remote team, you've maybe never met in person. And so or you have people that are new on the team and you haven't really gotten the vibe of each other yet. So making sure that you're just taking the time to be mindful of how you're coming across to people who have less experience than you. I think it can actually be really valuable as a senior to get reviews from more junior team members. One, because like you were saying, Hila, they can, have learned things in university or wherever, in the years since we've graduated, but also having to explain what you're doing to somebody, with less experience or less context can kind of make you check your assumptions, can make you be less clever with your code. I'm usually always of the opinion that you shouldn't be overly clever with your code, because whoever is maintaining this 6 months from now, if they get woken up at 2 a.m, they're not going to be impressed by how much you crammed into one line of bash. They just want to understand what the heck your code is doing. So having people coming in and asking questions like, what does this do? I've never seen this before, can actually be really valuable in helping you, both give teaching experiences and make sure that your code is understandable by people who don't have all of the context in your head.
Mm-hmm.
Got it. Those are two amazing responses. And we have a question that I'd love both of you to weigh in on. Mario, thank you for your question. They're in an R&D department where there are engineers who expect immediate PR reviews, and obviously this causes friction between team members. What is a good way to manage expectations and to mediate this?
To understand why an immediate response is needed.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not always like a first thing, like in order to advance from being a junior to a senior level, it's not related to writing code. It's just a matter of asking why. Always ask why. This will lead you to understand the assumptions, the why we're doing things in a certain way, is it the right thing to do, etc. So even this, there's an expectation. Okay, why? Let's understand why. Maybe they have a certain fear or something from upper management, and they translated it to we need immediate responses. But maybe we can address it better because we have more context or we have more knowledge, and then we can say, oh wait, this is what you're afraid of or you're concerned of or you want to address. Good, we can do it in a different way, and then eliminate the overhead of needing to respond to PRs just like that.
Yeah, I think outside of, production is actively on fire and we need to get a fix out the door, there are probably relatively few times when something has to be reviewed immediately. So yeah, the question of where did that expectation come from? Is it a matter of planning? Do people only ever have one work stream at a time? And as soon as that, goes into code review, then all of a sudden they, it looks like you've lost the lights there.
I have automatic, like, I just need to move and then it will sort it out, I think.
Yeah, sorry. As soon as the PR goes into code review, then are they blocked? Like, do they have nothing else to work on at that point? In which case that feels like kind of, a management problem or a planning problem that can be addressed by making sure there's a queue of other work that can be pulled from, that's already, prioritized so people know, this is the most important thing to be working on. But yeah, just looking at where that expectation is coming from, for sure.
Absolutely. Okay, we have one more question from the audience that I feel makes sense. This one I'll direct to you, Rin. Any tips on how to get engineers to ask more questions in PRs? Our team has a very collaborative approach to development, lots of pairing, lots of code reviews. Everyone knows that having questions is safe, but some team members only ever reply with, looks good, ship it.
Yeah. I think the best thing that I've found with this over the course of my career is just leading by example. Be the questioner you want to see in the world. I think this can carry over between mediums, between platforms. So like I try as often as possible when I have a question to ask in Slack, I will ask it in, the team channel, the public channel, and not in DMs, because that just kind of gets the mindset in people's heads of like, questions are for everyone, answers are for everyone. Like if people come into, my DMs in Slack with a question, every single time I will direct them to the public channel, and I'll just like, I won't answer them in DMs. I will only give them the answer in the public channel, because that helps spread it for everyone, to make sure that everyone can learn from those questions and answers. And then just making sure that like, even if you're having the worst day in the world and everything has gone wrong and all you want to do is like set your computer on fire and throw it out the window, to not take that out on people who are asking questions. Just again, being mindful of your tone, especially if you're, interacting with more junior people on the team who might be kind of nervous to be asking questions in the first place.
And another reason to put questions in our channels is because you never know what answers you will get. So you can only search in, like, if I need answers about something, I can search channels, and then I will probably would be able to get the needed information based on the answers that were gotten from the questions, So if the it's not about lunch or whatever, put it in a Slack channel for everyone, because this is the most important aspect of having information, because not a lot of people put or use Confluence or whatever knowledge base that they're using, and put and really structure it. So a lot of the information that we need in our day-to-day lies within Slack. So use it, have it as a knowledge base, and that's why discuss everything on Slack on public channels. And then I will add something else about asking questions. You can add, I didn't do it myself because I always just pour a lot of information in the PR, but if you want to address it like that, you can write the description with questions like, why did I choose X? Like, ask yourself in the description and put the answer. Do it like for 3-4 main questions, and then whenever someone reads it, they will have the mindset of questions, answers, and then I think they will continue with asking the questions, because you already set the tone for that.
I do a similar thing in PRs, where when I'm the one who's opening a PR, I will often start out by putting a couple comments in, like PR comments, not code comments, in the PR, to just be like, hey, like, here's what I was thinking here. Does this make sense to you? But just doing it in line like that, which again gets people primed to think about that.
We didn't plan it, folks. It's not planned, okay? We just think alike, but it's not planned.
Awesome. Great minds and all that. I have to endorse the both of your tactics on Slack. Where possible, please keep those conversations about PRs out of DMs and in a main channel. It invites a lot of other people to weigh in, and it really saves you time from trying to cross-reference DMs from like 13 people. I think that's a really big one. A small thing that's a really big lift. We are getting a lot more questions, but before we take more questions from the participants, I'd like to get your take on how is AI impacting this space and helping to make pull requests more efficient. So Hilal, why don't we start with you?
What is AI? So AI definitely changed the game for a lot of things, a lot of our processes, including pull requests. So first of all, it starts with before the opening the pull request and during the pull request. So before the pull request, there are tools, Amazon Q Developer, other tools for sure that actually you can use in your IDE, which is the most important thing, because you don't need to leave your IDE. It's your safe haven, stay there. So you can use it in order to optimize your code, make sure that it is readable and whatever context you want to give it through prompt engineering. So do the work yourself. And then once you know the code is optimized as much as possible from your perspective, of course, and you test it out, and you can also create unit tests through the tool that you are using, then create the pull request and then continue from there. And the review should be more simple because it already went through a review by AI, so by a language model. So that's one thing. And then during the pull request, there are tools, Kodu, and I don't remember others, but just type in Google pull request AI tooling, and you will find a bunch of those that you can incorporate through a pull request, and then it will give you both recommendations on how to improve the code, but also a very important aspects of security. If someone by accident committed an access key or anything that is sensitive, it will remove it and save a lot of trouble for the company. So these are the two aspects, and definitely AI tools should be leveraged here in order to produce more quality code and remove other non-necessary stuff to commit like sensitive information.
Absolutely. Any thoughts from you, Ren?
Yeah, I've got a, slightly different take on the whole thing. I think it's important to just be aware of like what use cases AI is and isn't appropriate for. Like the one of, generating unit tests, I think makes a lot of sense where you've got something that is a pretty well-known pattern and it's going to be really repetitive and tedious to do that by hand. Like absolutely have the computer do it for you. But I've seen in too many places, like not anyone that I work with, luckily, but the internet exists. We've seen horror stories on, the platform formerly known as Twitter of, people who will just take whatever the AI spits out and kind of just shove it into production kind of unthinkingly, uncritically. And you got to remember, it's not actually intelligent. It's predictive. So if a whole bunch of people are doing things a particular way, that doesn't necessarily mean that's the best way of doing things or that it's the best way for your particular use case. We haven't talked about high trust versus low trust yet, but I would kind of put that in the lower trust sort of thing, because this is code that was not written by a human that you know and trust. So just take the AI generated code with a grain of salt and make sure that you are, double checking, does this look correct or is it actually correct? Especially when those tools are new to your team and you are collectively figuring out how to best use them in your workflow for your use cases.
Yeah, you gotta test it out. I didn't even address it because I don't want to believe it exists. I know it exists, that people do it. I don't want to believe it, but it does. So please don't generate the code yourself, okay? Write the start of it, optimize it, but still run it, test it out, make sure it actually works, make sure to test with several use cases, and then create a pull request. Okay?
So Jacqueline, thank you for your question. Jacqueline asks, they know that they can Google the tools, but is there one AI tool specifically that either of you like to use? AI tool.
So I use Amazon Q Developer. I work for AWS, so but it is a good tool. So, but before I mean, I know my friend uses Kodu in the pull request like itself. It integrates within the pull request, and they say that they recommend it. I haven't used it myself. So for me, for now, mostly Amazon Q Developer.
All right. Why don't we have a bunch of other questions and we'll work those in as we get them, but I would like to move us forward to more personal experiences. And Rin, I'd like to start with you. Earlier in your career as a junior engineer, was there a PR review you felt made you grow as an engineer?
I can think of a couple that made me want to cry. I mean, that was a growth experience in a way. No, but I feel like the risk that some senior engineers can run is that they want to feel smart, they want to feel clever. Like we all want to feel like we're doing good at our jobs, and some people approach that in different ways than others. I think, when I was coming up in the industry 15 mumble years ago, there was a lot more tolerance of like the bastard operator from hell or like the brilliant asshole who, sits in the corner and is mean to everyone, that thankfully we as an industry are moving away from. But I definitely remember a couple pull requests early in my career where it felt like they were trying to get me to feel bad about myself, which was not really a good learning experience for anyone. So I think I would say if you are more senior, like, don't be an asshole, obviously, but also think about, kind of what is the purpose of the corrections that you're making? Like, are you genuinely concerned about the functionality of the code that you're reviewing, or is somebody just solving a problem in a different way than you personally would do it, but it's still a valid solution? So yeah, I think that can kind of come into questions of how do you make a, inclusive environment, is being kind of aware of who is doing the nitpicking and who is getting nitpicked, and
Right.
making sure there aren't any patterns there.
Absolutely. And now, Hila, what I want to dig in with you is more on the managing conflict side. As a more senior engineer, what are habits you yourself have had to unlearn or had to work with others to unlearn?
So yeah, I had a pull request where I opened the pull request and then someone suggested a different way to address or to do what I did just differently, and then I took it with them offline and made sure that okay, it does make sense and even more sense for this use case, and just I wasn't aware of that way. So even if it will take me a bit of time to refactor my code, it's worth it because of the solution itself and how their suggestion really made sense for that solution. So it really is a matter of not having an ego, because if someone knows better than you, it's always in a certain point of time and about a certain something, so all good. Always think about, treat it as a learning experience, but always think about whatever you're trying to solve. You're writing code for a company. The most important thing is to do what's best for the company, for the use case, for the application. So if someone tells you something that you didn't know and it requires you to refactor the code, first of all, check if it is in the you need needs to refactor the code, or as Rin said, it's just a different way to solve something. But both solutions are viable, so all good. But if their suggestion is indeed more making sense, then take the time to check if you have time deadlines wise to refactor the code. If so, do it. If not, then merge the code as is, and then just open another ticket to refactor it later on. So that's like from my end. From the other end, for giving feedbacks that weren't always necessarily accepted, it's a matter of an approach. So there was a time for me that there was a small pull request, basically, just a couple of lines of code, but I never check. I look at the screen, okay, and the screen, the GitHub showed it always shows like a couple of lines above the changes. And then I noticed something odd. I'm like, what is this? I mean, I don't know. I know the application. I know what we're doing. This doesn't make sense. And then he's like, I don't know. And what do you mean you don't know? It's not mine. Okay. So I will review your changes. All good. I'm not a blocker. This is very important. It's not a blocker, but let's take it offline and make sure that this section is really needed, because I have a whole philosophy that documentation should be like code should be documentation. Whatever you put in the code should be the way for you to understand what's going on. If there's something that is not necessary, don't put it in the code, because it could be unnecessary both for performance wise for running the code, but also in the middle of the night when I need to run something or I need to fix something, I will go to this and like, oh, what is this chunk? And then I will perhaps delve into it, even though it's unnecessarily and not even related to anything. So I wasn't a blocker, but I told him, let's take it offline and understand what is this chunk of code and remove it if it's not necessary. And then this person said, no, too much of a hassle. I had this task of changing this and that's it. And I'm like, okay, but we are DevOps engineers. We shouldn't only look on our small bracket. We always need to think more wide, and the whole purpose of DevOps is improving the software delivery lifecycle. So let's improve the software delivery lifecycle, but not having stuff that we shouldn't have in our code. So I had to make some to do some conversation, and he got heated up and he got mad. I don't know why, but I remained calm because justice is with me. No, I'm kidding. But because people could be emotional sometimes, so I just had a conversation with them and explained why is it important, and then he said, okay, I understand, I get it. And then again, he merged the code, all good, but we took it offline and understand what's this chunk of code, and eventually we removed it because it was indeed unnecessary. So
I think thank you for sharing that experience, Hila. I think those are really important conversations to have. And I know that some of our webinar viewers today, like they might feel intimidated. Maybe they're more junior. And I do think it's an opportunity to lean on your managers to help you navigate some of the trickier situations that can arise from pull requests. As a manager and even as a director, I've definitely done my part to help engineers to navigate these types of conflicts with the goal of elevating the PR culture for the broader organization. Okay, we keep getting questions and then there's
Can I just add one point?
Oh, sure.
I think what you said about not being a blocker is really important, because I think you were saying earlier, Hila, about is there a deadline for this? Like, what's the time frame? And I think that is really important in kind of resolving those conflicts, is being able to take a step back and say, how critical is this that we get this out the door now? Like, do we need to, is the primary goal here to unblock this so we can, move this forward, get it into production or whatever? Or do we have the time to take a step back, do some refactoring now? And I think if you can kind of agree on that ahead of time, like, what is the urgency of this? How much do you need to unblock versus can you dig in, is going to really help kind of diffuse some of those tensions.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely, 100%. Thank you, Rin. We have a question from Paige, which falls in line with a topic we wanted to touch on anyway, with high trust, low trust environments. Do you have specific suggestions for effectively handling PRs in open source repositories, both as a contributor and maintainer? So I'd like to start with you, Rin.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things that you can do as a maintainer is to make everything as transparent and consistent as possible, because you want to make it easier for people to contribute. If you have a company that maintains multiple different open source repos, and every single repo has a different process for how you're supposed to contribute and a different team behind it and people who will jump down your throat if you don't follow their exact process, that discourages contributions. Whereas if everything is kind of the same process in between repos, it's going to be a lot easier to onboard new contributors. But yeah, that being said, in those lower trust environments where you don't necessarily know who this person is, I think it's more important. It's important to make sure that you do more to understand the context of the change, to make sure that everything has been tested. Like testing is going to be more important when there's lower trust. And what was I going to say? Completely blanked on that. There was a third thing. It went away. Maybe it'll come to me.
Okay, if it comes back, we'll be ready for you. We've gotten a few questions in the queue that kind of fall in line with what is one thing people could do today or even tomorrow to start improving their PR culture. And I think it's important to layer onto that the perspective of, like, are you a more junior engineer? Are you a more senior engineer? Are you leading a team as a tech lead or engineering manager? So Hila, any advice? What is one thing someone could start to do today to improve their PR culture as a more senior engineer?
So first of all, I encountered a lot of people that whenever they put a PR link, they write, please approve, and not please review, which is not good, because I'm not gonna approve, just is like tick and that's it. I need to review it, and I want to make sure that the person that opened the PR knows and is willing, and they opened it because they want to get a review and not just to get a stamp. So that's first thing, because You can say it's just a matter of figure of speech. I don't believe it. I think that it conveys what's in your mind. So write, please review, then you will, and really believe that you want a review and not
And
just
then
have
actually
a,
review it, not
yeah,
just approve.
yeah.
Okay,
That's
Rin.
that's like the most important thing for me.
I'll go to you, Rin, and maybe from the perspective of a more junior engineer.
I think getting the team to agree on your standards and processes ahead of time so you can make sure that things are as consistent as possible, whether that's something like setting up standard linting practices so that you don't have to waste time in PRs arguing about, like, should there be a semicolon at the end of the line or not in places where it's optional, or are there spaces around your squiggly brackets, things like that, that can just, because I think it can be really easy for PRs to devolve into nitpicking about optional syntax or, essentially cosmetic changes, because that's easier than digging into like the bigger architectural problems, especially if, you haven't done your due diligence in making sure you understand what is, the business context behind these changes in the first place. So getting as much of that kind of boilerplate out of the way, getting as automation as possible to get your CI pipeline flowing. Oh, that's the thing I was going to say about lower trust environments is less automation. You don't want to automatically deploy stuff into important environments if that stuff is coming from a rando on the internet and not somebody on your team, because you don't know who's going to be malicious or not. But thinking about how you can set up the automation to make it easier for people on the team to contribute regardless of seniority.
Got it.
Actually, the boilerplate could be done through the CI, because all the linting stuff can be done through a CI, and then you don't need to think about it because the CI will catch it. And also another thing from the perspective of writing infrastructure as code, when you write Terraform code, it's very important to put tags for every resource that you create, because this is the way to manage the cost, to make sure that we know each resource to which project and which team it belongs to. So this also something that you can catch in a CI. You put a check, and then if someone didn't add tags, you don't need to even think about it, because the CI will catch it, and then you can't even merge the PR until that person adds the necessary and the mandatory tags. So these are things that you can do in the CI in order to get the load overview as a reviewer.
Absolutely. And again, I would like to contribute as well from the engineering leader perspective. I really think something that NEM could do tomorrow is to create that space that Rin and Hila have talked about. Leverage team retrospectives, or even carve out ad hoc time to really hear from your team members about the bottlenecks in the PR process and any pain points that they're experiencing, and agree on some next steps together. And that will really start to turn things around right away. I can't believe how quickly time went. We are down to 2 minutes, but we can fit in one or two questions. There's a question here about improving the speed of PR reviews in the monorepo setup. Are there any best practices, tools, or workflow changes you recommend to reduce review bottlenecks?
Wow. So as a DevOps engineer, I worked in a monorepo, not a lot, but quite a few. And first of all, the CI should be appropriate to that. So I actually incorporated a CI check that checks which type of files were changed in the repo, if it's Go or Node or whatever, and then run the appropriate tests for that, because Go tests back in the day for that repo ran for 7 minutes, and then all the rest of the programming languages ran for half an hour. So you don't want to change do a commit for Go only, Go files only, and then wait 37 minutes for whole test to run. So the CI, like, this is first thing, the CI should be incorporating the relevant tests. So whenever you do the changes in certain files, then only the relevant tests will run. And then you know that after the pull request has been done, the review was done, you can merge it. Because I had plenty of times before we incorporated this change that the pull request was long reviewed, all good, but they're still waiting for the CI to finish running the tests because it ran all the tests. So this is first thing. And now I forgot the question.
Well, I want to make sure that we get one more question in. So if it's okay, we can. Okay. So we have a question from Tenmaya, which I want to send over to you, Rin. What are your opinions on size of the PR, both in terms of lines and files changed?
The smaller the better, which is actually what I was going to say to the previous question as well, because I feel like the bigger the repo, the easier it is to get PR sprawl, but where you're like, well, while I'm here, I'll just clean up this. No, don't do that. That's how the PR gets big, and when the PR gets big, you run the risk of people's eyes glazing over, and they're just like, yep, looks good to me. I'm going to lunch now. Yeah, the smaller the PR is, the easier it is to understand what the changes are, the easier it is to, if you have to roll something back, to know what it was that caused the problem. Like we moved away from waterfall for a reason, so let's keep that in mind with our PRs and make them as small and as tightly scoped as possible for your use cases.
Mm-hmm.
Amazing. I'm going to have to cut us off there. I would like to take this time to invite, if you have a question that we didn't get to answer, please join us in the Lead Dev Slack channel. The name of the Slack channel is webinar-q-and-a. Please join us there and we'll respond to questions. But before we sign off, give yourselves a round of applause. We've had some amazing panelists. You've had amazing questions. This was a really great discussion. So thank you to our incredible audience, to Lead Dev, and for everyone who joined today. I think your takeaway here is, remember, small changes will have a big impact. Juniors, you can ask the why behind feedback to deepen your learning. Senior engineers, you can lead with positivity before critique, and managers, you can take the time to hear from your team members about their PR issues and hidden bottlenecks. So we can all do our part to turn PRs into less of a chore and more into a superpower. So I'll see you all over in the Lead Dev Slack channel, webinar-q-and-a. And thanks again.
Thank you.